All right, so big picture. This is the most interesting wrestling has been. I'm going to say personally, since all the CM Punk shit was going down when it didn't seem like his contract was going to get renewed, or maybe it was going to get renewed. He was going to wrestle this pay-per-view, and the discourse was just going nuts. To me, this is the best run wrestling has had. So I'm going to ask each of you, Shoemaker, is this the best since when?
Oh, God. I mean, the CM Punk run that you're talking about, the sort of pipe bomb into the summer of Punk, obviously has a very personal place for me. It's when I started writing for Grantland, and suddenly
Summer of Grantland.
Yeah, it went from, let me try to conceptualize how to do Raw recaps on this website, to just, it took over my life, just writing essays about Punk and how he bent reality in the pro wrestling world. This is definitely the biggest moment since that. I think that, if it weren't for my connection to it, you could probably say this is the biggest moment since sometime before that. I mean, the Attitude Era, whatever you want to say. I'm not even looking at numbers. If you want to look at numbers, it's definitely the biggest time since then, or since Hulkamania. I mean, they're making money hand over fist. But just in terms of cultural significance, in terms of just the hype that surrounds it, you got Ariel here interviewing guys like CM Punk and Rhea Ripley on his show. The degree to which WWE has permeated our sort of national sports discourse is pretty crazy.
What do you think, Ariel?
So I love everything about it, and I'm in heaven. This is cloud nine stuff for us wrestling fans. I don't want to be the hipster guy, but I will say, perhaps it's because I'm a Montrealer. I adored the Sami Zayn stuff last year, and I was in the building in Montreal in February, and I'm a diehard Montreal sports fan. I was there in the 90s when the Canadiens won. I was there in the 90s when the Expos were the best team in freaking baseball and were robbed of that in 94. And I've seen some pretty loud, arenas and stadiums in Montreal. I've never experienced anything like, the Bell Center in February at Elimination Chamber when it was Sami Zayn versus Roman Reigns. And that was personal. That touched me. So it's
couldn't
great.
we say that ties into now? I mean, it's basically this whole run that we're having.
Sort of, yes. The 4-year run of Roman Reigns. And I will also say this. I thought they botched it. I thought they botched it in Montreal. I thought they botched it in LA. I was mad. I went to the Raw after Mania last year, and I was like, what is this? Why couldn't you have just done it? And then Roman goes away. I'm like, why couldn't you have just given it to Cody? Why couldn't you have just given us what we wanted? And now I have to say, mea culpa. I'm thrilled they didn't do it, because I don't know if we get it like this. It was brilliant. I don't know if it was the plan from back then, but whatever it was, it's turned out to be a masterpiece.
Well, there's some dumb luck involved too, right? I mean, can we say officially that they had no idea that the crowd was going to react to The Rock like that, and they had to audible on the fly because he's probably the greatest checking every box wrestling personality we've ever had, and he understood immediately we've got a zag? Or do you think this is what they planned all along, Shoemaker?
That is the biggest question in pro wrestling. And it's a credit to WWE that that's not just the only conversation we're having, right? We're actually talking about the on-screen product and what's going to happen at WrestleMania 2. But by far, the biggest unknown is whether or not this was the plan all along. And for the uninitiated, I'll say, when The Rock made his return to wrestling, it was announced that he was going to take on Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, or all been announced. Cody Rhodes, who had previously been in that spot, had earned his way into that spot, just took a back seat, let The Rock do it. And the crowd, the diehard wrestling fans like me, rightfully disapproved, right? We were like, no, we've invested ourselves in Cody Rhodes. We don't want The Rock coming in here and taking a spot. And so The Rock did a hairpin turn, turned heel, slapped Cody Rhodes in the press conference, joined up with Roman Reigns, and now he's one of the bad guys that's going to be facing the good guys, Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. Whether or not, if this was the plan, it's one of the most brilliant booking decisions in the history of pro wrestling. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And more so than that, it shows that WWE learned something from the Daniel Bryan era of 10 years ago, right? So this rise to the top, this crowd uprising that we hadn't planned for. They either learned from that lesson and said, we can't let that happen again, or they learned from that lesson so much that they said, let's do that. Let's make that happen. Let's create a false Daniel Bryan situation and channel it into making this WrestleMania main event, or night one main event, even bigger. It's crazy. I mean, it's really crazy to think about.
So what happens if Vince McMahon is still running stuff? Does he audible, or does he be like, no, we're doing what we said
Why
we
do
were
we
going to do
even have to go there? Why can't we just enjoy
asking.
the peace?
I'm just asking. It's a question.
No, I know.
It does feel like this current regime is more sophisticated where like, hey, we have to audible. Like people are pissed off.
Well, listen to
we
the
have to
audience,
audible.
right? Isn't this what we always want? We're like, why can't you just listen to us? The beauty of pro wrestling is, unlike, real sports, you can actually dictate where this goes, and you can listen to the people, and you could use that to your advantage. And sometimes it feels like they have made decisions in the past just to spite the audience, just to almost like make them mad. And so,
you mean like how I'm doing Rock Bottom month on the rewatchables right now, like similar to that,
or there's a million different examples.
Yeah.
I gotta give The Rock so much credit, because what did we hear? And this is not a shot at John Cena, but we had always heard like, we don't want to turn him heel because Make-A-Wish and he sells so much merch, and it's just
it was always the merch. Yeah, we lose merch money if it goes bad. Okay.
We all wanted to see Cena turn heel, and you have a billion different reasons why Rock shouldn't turn heel, right? He's Mr. Disney. He's got Moana 2 coming out. He's doing Make-A-Wish stuff. Like, he is as wholesome as it gets. And this guy's freaking dropping F-bombs left and right, and he's talking about Mama Rose, and he's making Cody bleed, and all like. It's so much fun. It's so much fun that I'm taking my phone and I'm shoving it in my wife's face. I'm like, look at this cinema. Look how great this is. He swore. He's breaking the fourth wall. They're saying cut, and he's still going. It's amazing. She doesn't quite get it, just for the record, but I feel like a kid. It's just so much fun. And it's our guy from the 90s doing this with the Versace and the shades, Hollywood rock, corporate rock. It's amazing. I love everything about it.
To answer your question, and I agree, we can leave this part of it aside, but during the Vince McMahon era, Ariel mentioned John Cena. During that era, we were asking questions like, why don't you turn John Cena heel? These big things that are just like, you're making the bad decision. Now we're arguing about whether or not they made the right decision one way or another way, right? I mean, everybody's the right faces are baby faces, right? The right heels are heels. And then, after Sunday night, we'll see who flips to the other side. I'm sure it'll be controversial one way or the other, but I have confidence that they make these choices in the right way now.
Well, with Cena would have been a good bad guy. I mean, the thing is, anybody who's a great performer can do either side. Like when we were all shocked when Hogan turned bad in the mid-90s, it worked because he's really good at this, and Rock there was the bad guy version of Rock, and then he became a good guy in the late 90s, and that was really how it stayed for the most part. But then you remember when he wrestled Hulk in that WrestleMania match.
I was there.
Hulk was supposed to be the bad guy, but the crowd was behind Hulk, and Rock on the fly was like, oh, all right, I'll bring out the heel side, and then became the heel just for the match. But, we always knew he had it in him. I was surprised this time around, though, because he's such, he's an A-list movie star. And this was just like, wow, he's going for this. I mean, he's swearing. He beat the shit out of Cody Rhodes. My son and I watched it last week. So my son's so he's in that stage now where it's like, I'm too cool for wrestling, which is adorable.
He's a UFC fan.
He'll be back. Yeah, he's like, UFC is much better. But we watched that and he's like, this is amazing. We're getting WrestleMania. This is awesome. Yeah. But The Rock really seems like he's pushing the boundaries.
It is. I mean, the question wasn't, could The Rock do this? We've seen The Rock be a heel before, maybe not to this degree. The question was whether or not the face of Moana, right? The face of Terramana Tequila or whatever. I mean, whether or not the guy who got on his Instagram to try to explain away the Shazam box office or whatever, whether or not that guy would be willing to turn heel publicly to the degree he has. And it's a huge credit to him that he's still got his fastball. I guess after
Ballers, do you see some of this? Ballers, not a great show, but he became addicted to painkillers and Ballers, and so he was in Pain and Gain, I guess, was another one where he tested the limits. But
we knew he had this in him, but I didn't think he would do this at 51 in 2024. Like, what's the point? And to me, I've had a few rants, 2016, 2017. 2015, I was like, what pisses me off about pro wrestling? It's too damn predictable. I just felt like you can predict a mile away what was going to happen. Now, I legitimately, that was actually part of my problem with last year's Mania. I was like, oh, this is obvious. Cody's of course he's going to finish the story, right? And they didn't do it. And I thought they would do it in Montreal with Sammy, and they didn't do it. And now it's like Rock's turning heel. I think there's a very strong case to be made for Cody not winning on Sunday. I love that. That's why I fell in love with combat sports, right? Boxing, MMA. it's unpredictable. Chuck Liddell can, be the face of the UFC and then get knocked out in 70 seconds by Rampage Jackson after he's on ESPN, the magazine. Like, you would never do that in pro wrestling. And so here, like, the script says, oh, of course, let Cody win. It's time. And then it's, oh, of course, The Rock is going to turn on Roman and they're going to build to WrestleMania 41. But I really don't know what's going to happen. And that's all we want in pro wrestling. We want that unpredictability. And I feel like they're just like swimming in it right now.
So, big picture storylines. We have The Rock just kind of reclaiming his throne as he's in the argument for the greatest wrestler ever combo. He's my personal choice because I thought he brought the most to the table, especially when you talk about Mike Skill, his ability to be bad guy, good guy, everything. Like he's still, I think, the best Mike guy ever for me. But you have that. You have this Roman Reigns run that's now heading toward one of the great WWE/WWF heavyweight championship runs we've ever had. So there's that. Then there's this Cody Rhodes angle too. Did you ever think Cody Rhodes would be on this level? I mean, when he had his last run, I was like, oh man, he probably could have done better. But did you see this?
No, I mean, listen, you talk about the greatest on the mic of all time, you got to talk about his dad, right? I mean, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, he was a different kind of guy. They cut so many promos. He was like a jazz musician. They just put the camera in front of his face and he'd be like, tomorrow night in Tunica or whatever. And suddenly he'd be just delivering the greatest promo of all time. And you didn't realize it till you were halfway in. Cody has a lot of what his dad had, but it's not as free flowing, it's not, it doesn't just ooze out of him in the way that Dusty did. And it was always there. You could always see it. But, there were times in his first run in WWE where you thought they could position him higher, but it never felt like a travesty. When he left WWE, he went all over the indies. It showed that he had a good mind for the business. It showed that he was willing to bet on himself. And then when he helped start up AEW, you could really start to imagine him as a top guy.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing was you looked at him in AEW as like the top guy of the sort of 1B promotion, and then when he walked in the door of WrestleMania, they re-debuting with WWE, it was like he fit better there as a top guy than he did in AEW. He just walked in and it was just like, I can't believe how neatly this fits. He stands next to Roman Reigns and they look like the good guy and bad guy action figures from the same cartoon. They work so well standing across from each other. And I've said this a million times, but the most impressive thing about Cody Rhodes is that I never thought we would see a white meat baby face, just a straight down the middle, hugging kids and like doing the right thing, good guy again. Even at John Cena's peak, he was getting Cena sucks chants. Cody is just as much a babyface as Cena, but everybody is cheering for him. It's really, really
Why is
incredible.
that, Ariel? Why has he not had the backlash yet?
It's because he's sympathetic. It's because we love Dusty, and this ties to Dusty. We all felt like Dusty should have been champion in WWF, and there's that story about him holding the belt for like 6 seconds, and now we want, like, literally, I sound like a mark here. I'm fully admitting this, but I think we all would love the old school fans, for nostalgic reasons, would love to see him finish that and give it to his mom, and maybe I know his brother can't show up because he works for AEW, but like this is a wrestling family and they've been through a lot, and it's just amazing to see it kind of tie into his dad, and so he's very sympathetic. He's someone who's easy to root for, and to David's point, like, he always looks good. He's always dressed nicely. He's always like, clean cut, nice. And I have to say, his mic work, and I'm not even talking about his mic work on, Raw or SmackDown, whatever. Let's just talk about a pretty dark time. This is a great time for WWE, but it's also a pretty dark time, right? With all the Vince McMahon stuff. And every day, even yesterday, right? It's WrestleMania week. It's the Monday, and there's some dark stuff coming out. And it's hard to kind of wrestle with that part in the pun because we love it, but we also see this stuff, and this is evil, disgusting stuff that we're reading. And what happens on the first show after the lawsuit comes out, Royal Rumble in Tampa, they do these press conferences, and sometimes they're a little bit clunky, right? There's sometimes a little like, is it a work? Is it a shoot? And who delivers the best response right off the bat? Better than anyone, better than any executive could have, better than any other person who sat on the dais. It's Cody Rhodes. Like, you saw him sitting up there trying to kind of digest all of this, and it was real, and his words were perfect. Like, I looked at him and I was like, oh, this guy could be the face. This guy could be like the promoter, thinking of it in that way.
Yeah.
Like, he was exceptional in a really crappy spot, in a spot, quite frankly, that he shouldn't have had to answer for. Like, it has nothing to do with him in many respects. And I thought, that's the guy. Like, that, they always talk about who's the guy that you could put the belt on and he could go on the Tonight Show and he could represent the company. That's the guy that you want representing the company.
Oh, absolutely true. As soon as he was hired, I didn't know if he would ever be the face of WWE. But when they brought him on, I was just like, the Nick Khan WWE is going to love this guy, right? I mean, this is a pro. This is a professional athlete. The LeBron James level of like, let me get in front of a microphone and help my business. It's really, but just to be really clear, why do we love him so much? Everything that Ariel said is correct. But leading up to this WrestleMania, the idea of Cody versus Roman version 2 was not necessarily the biggest thing in the world. It's the way they told it was taking it away from him. The reason why we care about Cody so much is because The Rock came in and took it away. And now everybody who was halfway invested or on the fence was just like, no, Cody's our guy. Like, we love Cody. And whether or not that was what we felt the day before, that's what we feel now. And so we're so much more invested in watching him win.
And if I could just add one more thing, I think the best storylines, especially of the last decade, have been when the fans feel like they have actually helped create the story. And so Kofi Kingston, Kofi Mania, Daniel Bryan, Yes Movement, when the fans feel like they have influenced the bookers into perhaps calling an audible, changing course, I think a lot of the fans feel like now, like, oh, look, we made this happen. Mm-hmm. We crapped on what you guys were doing. We made this happen. And so now he's our guy. And we're now even going to be more invested in him and backing him. And I think that always works when it could work out like that. Becky Lynch with the man, like, the fans propelled her. And I feel like the same thing is happening here with Cody.
Do you think I could do that with the New England Patriots to get them to take Drake May?
I hope not.
Could I do like a fan for like Drake? They weren't going to take him, but Drake May is our guy, and then all of a sudden,
you might be able to.
The passion of the fan base gets behind him. He's the next Josh Allen. You don't want Drake May in our division.
No, I want you guys to screw up every pick.
I
want
you
to
trade back and make some dumb trade like the
Mac Jones.
Stupid trade
Mac Jones
trade.
is the future. Come on,
Bring back Jones.
Yeah.